Lord possessed me in the beginning of his way, before his works of old. I was set up from everlasting, from the beginning, or ever the earth was. When there were no depths, I was brought forth, when there were no fountains abounding with water. Before the mountains were settled, before the hills was I brought forth, while as yet he had not made the earth, nor the fields, nor the highest part of the dust of the world. When he prepared the heavens, I was there. When he set a compass upon the face of the depth, when he established the clouds above, when he strengthened the fountains of the deep, when he gave to the sea his decree that the water should not pass his commandment, when he appointed the foundations of the earth, then I was by him.
I am wisdom. Those who seek me shall find me.
Welcome to Wisdom Seekers, Lesson 3. I'm your host, Carl Thomas, an adventure into the mysteries of success. This is a 6-video lesson series. Remember that. It's on the end-time transfer of wealth. In Lesson 1, we talked about what is the transfer. It's where God takes wealth from Egypt and gives it to Israel. Now, who is Israel? It's a spiritual entity. Now, in Lesson 2, we talked about why will there be a transfer? Because the unrighteous rich have abused earth's profit, which is for all men. They've taken it for themselves, heaped it up in abundance, more increase, and God said, this isn't good. Right? Now, he's watched this for 6,000 years. How much longer is he going to watch it? How much longer is he going to watch the abuses on planet Earth? And you say, but Carl, but God is the Satan of this world. Yeah, he is, but he's not the God of earth. The earth belongs to God. 1 Corinthians 10:26, the earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof. Psalm 24:1 says the same thing. Satan might be the God of this world, but he's not the God of earth. And not only that, what did God tell us? Come out from the world and be separate. So if we're stuck in the world system, God's not going to transfer the wealth from the world to the world, from the wicked who's in the world to the Christian who's in the world. He's not going to do that. Would you do it? No, you wouldn't do it. Now, Romans 8:19, for the earnest expectation of the creature waiteth for the manifestations of the sons of God. Also in the text it says this, when will the end-time transfer of wealth take place? When God's sons, when God's children become sons. That's what we're talking about here. See, Romans 8:19, for the earnest expectation of the creature. What is the creature? What God created. In other words, all of earth is waiting for God's children to grow up, mature, and become sons. I think there's more wealth in the ground than we've ever taken out of it. I don't think we're ever going to run out of anything. I think to say that we're going to run out of something is saying God shortchanged us. God didn't prepare in advance. You're running a corporation. Do you plan for your corporation to run out of the equipment it needs? No, you don't plan for that. Neither did God. Let's give God a little bit of sense. Now, we need to be better stewards of what God has given us. And I'm not saying that promoting bad stewardship of planet Earth. We need to be delicate, whether it's wealth, recycle or whatever. So we're not talking about that. But I think there's more wealth in the ground than we've ever taken out of it. And I think what's going to happen when we mature and become sons, God then will, the earth, the earnest expectation of the creature waiteth for the manifestation of the sons of God. In other words, when God's children stand up and become sons, start thinking the way he wants us to think, start laboring the way he wants us to labor, he'll deliver it over. And the earth will deliver it up. And you know what? I think he's going to do it. I really do. The end-time transfer of wealth is a topic that's all over this country. Now, why is it? About 7 years ago, I found it in the book of James, and I'll talk about it a little bit later. One night, in the middle of the night, God said, go to the library. I went to my library, opened up to James chapter 5, and I read it. Said, wait a minute, gold and silver doesn't rust, and it doesn't corrupt. What is it? And God showed me that night about 7 or 8 years ago, I'm going to transfer the wealth. So I've watched men who, a lot more well-known than I am across the country, talking about the end-time transfer of wealth. Is God putting it in the hearts of his men? I think he is. Did he put it in the hearts of his kids? No, because the kids want to play. But the sons want to be men. Now, when God's children become sons, that's when he's going to deliver it over. In Lesson 1, we discussed God's creation of earth. We're reading from the text now. And his trust in giving man stewardship dominion over it. God intended that earth's profit benefit all men, not just a greedy few. But greedy men have always sought to benefit themselves at the expense of others. When wicked men are rich and rule, men mourn. But when righteous men with the mind of Christ are blessed with riches and rule, men rejoice. That's what happened in this country for a couple hundred years. Now it's starting to change a little bit. In Lesson 2, we recognize that the mind of Christ represents the wisdom of God. Wise men labor unto the Lord, not for men. Does that make sense? You don't want people working for you, working in your company who are working for themselves. You want them working for you. Now, you built the company. You know what it takes for the company to prosper. So if people will do what you say, you'll bless the people that do what you say, won't you? Will God do the same thing? Of course he will. And you know what? 2 Chronicles 16:9 says, the eyes of the Lord look to and fro, looking across the earth for a man, woman, boy, or girl whose heart is right toward God, that God might show himself strong on that person's behalf. He's just looking for people. When righteous men employ God's knowledge in their labor, peace and prosperity reign. In this lesson, Lesson 3, we will see when God's children are patient and mature into sons, the wealth laid up for the just will be transferred from the sinners. Look up here, if you would, for a moment. Ecclesiastes 2:26. For God giveth to a man, not a child, but a man, that is good in his sight, wisdom and knowledge and joy. But to the sinner he giveth travail, which is employment, to gather and to heap up, that what? That he may give to him that is good before God. You got men in your corporation, and they're laboring for you. Their interest is in the company. Their interest is in the other employees. Who are you going to turn over the reins of the company to? You know, who do you think God's going to turn it over to? Same thing you're looking for. See? Now, down at the bottom of the page, of page 1, put yourself in God's place. Who would you want running earth? The righteous who have knowledge based on the mind of Christ, or the wicked who have knowledge based on the mind of man? Those who labor as unto the Lord with the wisdom of God, or those who labor for money with the wisdom of man? Those who are patient, where the children of God become obedient sons, or the children of wrath, disobedient children. Who do you want? Page 2. The sons of God overcome the wicked one. That's what it says in 1 John chapter 2. It says that a child's sins have been, I speak unto you children because your sins have been forgiven you. I speak unto you sons because you've overcome the wicked one. Why do you have to overcome the wicked one? Because he's the God of this world. And why? You've got to come out from the world and be separate. Otherwise, if you're in the world, operating in the world, God's not going to transfer the wealth to you. He can't. Why? Because who's the God of this world? Satan is. So anything that God puts back into the world, or what God gives you and you put back into the world, is a target by Satan, and he's got free reign on it because he's the God of this world. So God says, come out. God's not going to transfer the wealth to those who are still in the world. Why take it from the world and give it to the world? Doesn't make sense, does it? Now, the text, the wealth will be transferred to the sons, not children. The wealth of the sinner will be transferred to the just when the children of God behave like men. Mature men or sons of God, unlike children, recognize that the earth is the Lord's and that they are God's stewards. As stewards, they acknowledge God's ownership by their tithes and offerings. They realize that God's order is established by tithes. Man's order is established by taxes. When tithes finance a nation, a spiritual order is established. But when taxes fund a nation, a humanistic order is established. Malachi 3:8-14 records the blessings and curses that result when men tithe toward the maintenance of their own freedom or refuse to tithe and fall into the bondage of taxation. Where are we today in this country? You know why? Malachi 1:8 says this. God says, I know you Israelites, you don't fear me. Why? Because you'll pay your taxes to your government, but you won't give me your tithe. Look at Malachi 1:8. So God says you fear government, not God. And we're supposed to fear God, not government. What would you do if you were God? Are you going to give to those who don't fear you? Think about it. Now, am I saying don't pay your taxes? I'm not saying that. We can deal with that subject in another series. The sons of God aren't stupid. Kids are ignorant. That means they're without knowledge. But once you've got the knowledge, then after that you become stupid if you don't use it. Malachi 3:8-14. Circle the key words in each verse and write the words or the definition on the line to the right. Now, verse 8. Now, verse 7 of Malachi chapter 3 says this. God said, you return to me and I'll return to you. Hear what saith the Lord. But you say, Lord, wherein shall we return to you? See, God made Israel an offer. He's making us the same offer today. If God said today, listen, I'll meet you at 8th and 5th at 4 o'clock in a certain town, would you meet him? Now, you know what he said to Israel? Israel, I'll meet you. You return to me and I'll return to you. Because God said, you left, I didn't leave. I've always been here. He's the same yesterday, today, and forever. He doesn't forsake you and he never leaves. But he said, you return to me and I'll return to you. We say, God, wherein shall we return to you? He said, I'll meet you at the tithe. Malachi 3:8 says this. Will a man rob God? And see, when God said, come here, Israel, let me talk to you. Come here, church, let me talk to you. Come here, Christian, let me talk to you. He says this, you return to me and I'll return to you. And they said, Lord, where are we going to return? God said, before we get together, let me ask you a question. Would a man rob God? You know what God said? I'd love to get together with you, but you got your hands in my pocket. Will a man rob God? But you say, God, where we steal for you? He says in the tithes and the offerings. So the word I want you to circle there is rob. And write it on the line to the right. Rob. Now, you're cursed with a curse. For you rob me, even this whole nation. So circle the word curse. When you rob God, what do you get? You get cursed. Now, why did God say you robbed the nation? You know why? Because the nation funded itself through the tithe and not taxes. And you know what? 10% was enough to run it. And you know what? You could never expand government beyond the tithe. You could never go into debt because you can't spend taxes through deficit. You can spend taxes through deficit spending, but you can't spend the tithe, which is what? Only the money in front of you. That's why God said the gold and silver is mine. You don't have it on a fiat credit system with fiat money. You have it real money, which is gold and silver, and you're only going to put in the plate. You can't put in the plate IOUs or PYLs, which is pay you later. Okay? Now, bring you all the tithes in the storehouse that may be meat in mine house, and prove me now, here what saith the Lord. If I will not open the windows of heaven, pour you out a blessing, you won't be able to contain it. The word blessing. Circle the word blessing. Now, you know what we're saying by not tithing? God, I don't believe you. God, I don't believe that if I tithe, I'll have enough money to pay my bills. I don't think I can do that. Years ago, it's like 30 years ago in Miami, Florida, I was teaching, and a Cuban refugee came forward and he said, wait a minute, I make $100 a week. I'm spending $110 a week, and if you tell me I tithe, that's going to be $90. I'm going to be short $20 a week. He said, will you guarantee to me that I won't run short? And I thought for a minute, and I said, wait a minute. God's going to guarantee it. He said, but will you guarantee it? I said, yeah. Why? Because God said it. Well, you know what? He came back 2 weeks later and he said, you know what? I started tithing. And he said, a brother-in-law of mine who owed me $200 from 2 years ago sent it to me, and I didn't even ask him for it. Now, how do you get? By giving. How does the farmer get a bigger crop? He puts more seed in the ground. You see, it's all based on giving. So if you don't give any seed to God to plant, your harvest eventually is going to run out. See, God operates on giving. The whole earth operates on giving. And if you think you can steal from God and be blessed by God, it doesn't work. It's contrary to God's natural laws and His spiritual laws. Verse 11, and God said, I'll rebuke the devourer. So put here, rebuke Satan, the devourer. God said, I'll keep him out of your field. But if you're operating over there in the world just like everybody else, I can't go over into his field, but I can keep him from coming into your field. So you get over here with me. You come out from the world and be separate. You give the tithe to God, and God said, I'll protect you. Verse 12, and nations shall call you blessed. Why? Because you'll be a delightsome land, which is what? A blessed land. What is America? It's a blessed land, wasn't it? You know what they say about somewhere between 1 and 3% of the Christians in this country tithe. We're not going to make it on that, folks. Now, verse 13, your words have been stout against me. It's words, so just circle the word words there. And you know what we said? Verse 14, you said it's vain to serve God. And what profit is that we've kept His ordinances and that we walk mournfully before the Lord of hosts? What good is it? Now remember, the word Lord is the word controller, and the word host is the word armies. So what we're saying is, God, I'm not going to tithe to you because I don't have the faith to tithe to you. And God said, you can't come to me without faith. Because he that cometh to God must believe that He is and must believe that He rewards. So if you're not willing to plant seed by tithing, you're not going to have a harvest. Why? A farmer doesn't refuse to plant seed and go in the house and pray for God to bring a harvest. You tell that farmer, get out there, get some labor and plant some seed, wouldn't you? Why don't we do that in the church? I mean, we're really shortchanging people. Because I guarantee you, you tithe and it's coming back. It will come back. Why? You're planting seed. You want a bigger crop? Plant more seed. Page 3. The wicked one is rebuked by the Father. Page 3 in your notes. And look up here at the chart if you would. Oh, you know what I forgot to do? We forgot to fill in the words on the right. So let's go ahead and, or you already filled them in, but I didn't fill them in. The first one is what? Rob. What's the second one? Cursed. When you rob God, you're cursed. Then what happens? You give, you're what? You're blessed. What was the next word? What will God do? He will rebuke Satan. You know what that is? That's your security system in your house. He keeps him away. Keeps him out of your checkbook and your treasure. And then what will we be called? A fruitful land. And that's what America was. And we can be again. Then what was the last one? But your words. And we're to be doers of the words and not hearers only. Now page 3. At the top of the page, 1 John 2:13, I write unto you, young men, because you have overcome the wicked one. How do you overcome the wicked one? You come out from the world, because the world is his. When you come out from the world system, quit behaving like you're part of the world, and start behaving like we're part of God's kingdom, there'll be a change in our lives. God then can transfer the wealth. Otherwise, He's not. Now, the sons of God, young men, overcome the wicked one. The sons of God overcome the wicked one. Tithing reflects a man's heart and mind. The finances of many Christians are being devoured by Satan because they lack knowledge. They believe that church attendance, prayer, and praise complete worship. But men often worship money errs profit more than they worship God. Christians will labor for money 40 to 60 hours a week, but only give God 2 or 3 hours a week. Some of us don't even give God that. Labor in Adam preceded formal worship. Adam didn't have a Sunday school, but he had labor. Why? Because labor is a form of worship, and it's the first form. Because when you labor is unto the Lord, it's worship. But see, if you're laboring for money, then that tells what you worship. You're worshiping money. Labor in Adam preceded formal worship. It was and should be as much a part of worship as church attendance, prayer, and praise. Tithes and offerings are another essential part of worship because giving demonstrates that your heart is truly in your attendance, prayer, praise, and labor. Put your money where your mouth is. Tithing is critical because it acknowledges stewardship. God rebukes Satan's attack on faithful stewards, but God does not rebuke the devourer from stealing from those who are stealing from God. If a man can't give to God to whom he owes everything, then can he give to man to whom he owes little or nothing? If I can't give to God, then I can't give to you. If you got a corporation, I can't give my service to the owner of the corporation, I can't give it to the people working in the corporation. Right? And if I'm stealing from the owner, I'm going to steal from you. It only makes sense. Are you a child or a son? Children are introspective. They don't think about their own provision. Why? Because dad takes care of that or mom takes care of that. True sons accept responsibility. They realize that every family, business, and nation needs a source of income to survive. A nation's source of funding is either tithing or taxes. Your business has to have an income, your family has to have an income, and so does the nation. And the nation's form was the tithe. Now, we've got a man there, and the man is thinking, am I an owner or am I a steward? Which am I? If I'm an owner, I'm not going to tithe, I'm going to rob God. So under number 8, just write in the word rob there. Now, the moment that I begin to do that, verse 9 says I am what? Cursed. Now, if I recognize now that I'm a steward and not an owner, I'm working for God, and I start to tithe, you know what's going to happen? I'm going to be blessed. Then God is going to give me protection. He's going to rebuke Satan. And then what? I'll be fruitful. But if I say, oh, I can't give to God because I'm not making enough money, I'll be short. You know what's going to happen? 13, my words. I can't do it. Why? I don't trust God. And it all goes back to faith. Because Jesus is the Word. And you know what happens when I do this? Vanity. It's vain. Why? Because I'm working only for Satan to steal what I'm working for. Because he's got a right to steal it. And when we say, boy, do you run out of month before you run out of money? Do you run out of cash before you run out of checks? You know what the reason is? We're stealing from God. And if we steal from God, Satan can take everything we stole from. Everybody that came to me for counseling in over 25 years, not one of them was tithing when they were short. The people who, and I proved it to them, whether they were believer or unbeliever, I said, I've got conditions. I said, if what you're doing is working, keep doing it. But if it's not working, let me share with you what God says. Now I said, in order to continue counseling, are you willing to do what God tells you to do if I can show you in the book? They said, yes. Now I turned the book to it, and I said, now what does the book say? Not what I say, but what you think it says. When they tell me, then I say, well, then are you willing to do it? I said, I'll think about it. Well, when you think about it and come back for counseling, the session's over. Why? You can't, because if you're not willing to go with the book, you can't help anybody. And the first thing I said to him, you got to tithe. Why? Because I can help you get your finances in order, but Satan's going to keep stealing from you. I can't stop him. Only God can stop Satan from stealing from you. Page 4. Look at the text up here. Who then is that faithful and wise steward whom his Lord shall make him ruler over his household? You know who it is? Faithful sons who tithe. This tithe establishes freedom. The tithe establishes freedom. Romans 8:19 says that the earth is the Lord, is anxiously waiting for the manifestation of the sons of God. God will transfer the wealth to the faithful sons, but will God transfer wealth to those whose worldly debt takes the tithe? No. Nor will he give to those who refuse to tithe to the maintenance of their own freedom? No, he won't. God gives the men power to get wealth in order to establish his covenant. His covenant provides the earth's profit will benefit all men, not just a greedy few. If men can't or won't tithe to God, to whom they owe everything, will they give to people who they owe little or nothing? See, if we can't learn to give to God, we can't learn to give to each other, because we owe everything to him and a little to each other. The wealth will be transferred from the sinner to the just, not from the wicked to the righteous, as often erroneously stated. The end-time transfer is more specific. The word sinner refers to those who don't act in faith and could include Christians. The just are those who live by faith. The just trust that what they give in tithes and offering is sown seed. The seed they sow produces a crop for harvesting. The harvest they reap enables them to give even more. They give to get to give. Now, taxes bring bondage. Israel failed to tithe and as a consequence was burdened by taxes. The people didn't fear God or honor him with their tithes. In fact, they feared their governor more than their God, as evidenced by the fact that they paid taxes and refused to tithe. If God gets the tithe, the righteous rule. If government gets the taxes, the unrighteous rule. Whoever gets the money rules. It's the golden rule. Number 1, God gives men the power to get wealth that he might establish his covenant. Not my lifestyle, but his covenant. Number 2, his covenant makes provision for all men to profit from earth's wealth. Number 3, the wealth will be transferred to those who are committed to God's covenant and not just to their own career or lifestyle. And number 4, if God's people were as committed to world evangelism as the wicked are committed to world conquest, Christianity would prevail. Now, let me give you a quick preview of what we just went over. Go to page 1. When will the end-time transfer of wealth take place? When God's children become sons. Page 2. The sons of God then can overcome the wicked one. Page 3 at the top. The wicked one is rebuked by the Father. And page 4, the Father trusts wealth to faithful sons.